Hey there, welcome to First Look. I'm out, which is good, because it means I finally warmed up. It was cold this morning, good gracious. But I'm out and I'm on a walking trail, but I'm on that same trail where a couple of things can happen. Either bicycles can come by at rapid speeds, or people can just sneak up on me. Because I think if you remember a couple of videos ago, that's exactly what happened when I was out here, which was hilarious to watch in retrospect. But anyhow, it's good to be out. So, moving our way through Lent. Nearly to, it's not the end, but this is the last week before Holy Week. And so it's sort of our last opportunity to sort of stay right where we are until we start to kind of pivot. Even though the series that I have kind of extends into Holy Week a little bit and really through Easter, it's going to take on a different flavor because it's Holy Week. So this week, if we go from just a passage that you know as well as any passage out there, I think this week we kind of go to one that I can't imagine you have much in the bank for, because I don't know that I do either. And it's not like you've never read it, but it's probably not the one that you know the best. Now, what you're going to find is, in order for me to do all this is the tricky part, is that I'm going to try to get my text out here while I'm talking to you. And if I had any skills at all after this much time doing this, I would learn how to edit these things so you didn't have to do this part with me. But I don't. I also feel like it's part of the charm of there being a first look, that you get a chance to just see everything completely unedited in every single way, including me going around this drain, which I feel like is going to be my death. But I think I'm all right. All right, so the passage for this is John chapter 12. So get to John chapter 12. And then we go from verse 20 until verse 33. And it leads into a conversation of Jesus talking about his death, which makes sense if you're following along again where we are, week 5 of Lent. We're moving our way towards Holy Week. Our thoughts start to really center on this idea. So let me pause here for a second. Get to our passage. Whoop. All right, there it is. So this is John 12. Let me read it so I can put it back away in my bag, and then I can keep walking. They're Gentiles who want to talk to Jesus. That's the subtitle. Now, among those who went up to worship at the festival were some Greeks or Gentiles. They came to Philip, who was from Bethsaida in Galilee, and they said to him, "Sir, we wish to see Jesus." Now Philip went and told Andrew, and then Andrew and Philip went and told Jesus. Jesus answered them, "The hour has come for the Son of Man to be glorified. Very truly, I tell you, unless a grain of wheat falls into the earth and dies, it remains just a single grain. But if it dies, it bears much fruit. Those who love their life lose it, and those who hate their life in this world will keep it for eternal life. Whoever serves me must follow me, and where I am, there will my servant be also. Whoever serves me, the Father will honor. Now my soul is troubled, and what shall I say? Father, save me from this hour? No, it is for this reason that I have come to this hour. Father, glorify your name." Then a voice came from heaven. I have glorified it, and I will glorify it again. The crowd standing there heard it and said that it was thunder. Others said an angel had spoken to him. And Jesus answered, "This voice has come for your sake, not for mine. Now is the judgment of this world. Now the ruler of this world will be driven out. And I, when I am lifted up from the earth, will draw all people to myself." He said this to indicate the kind of death that he would die. Now, pieces of that, I think that we know. But I think that there's elements to it that certainly are different. I think the first part of that passage is, I think there's an interesting timing to it. And what's interesting about the timing is Jesus is kind of at a place where he's about to, he's moving towards the cross, obviously. But the interesting thing about it is that he's trying to indicate that there's something unique about the fact that people who are not Jewish are coming to see him, which I think is interesting. And I think the reason it's interesting is that he's spending a lot of his time, if you think about the other Gospels, he spends a lot of his time right around the beginning of Holy Week, I guess you could say, with a lot of critique about the Jewish people. So there's a lot of critique there about the nation as a whole. If you think about like the fig tree or different, there's obviously what happens in some of the Gospels, not in John. It happens early in John, but in some of the Gospels, we get to the place where we're talking about the clearing of the temple and the sellers there at the table, turning over the tables at the temple. And so there's a lot of critique about the people. There's a lot of mention of the temple. There's a lot of critique of the Pharisees. There's a lot of critique of kind of the system. And so these people fall obviously outside of that system. And so that kind of changes, I think that must have been why they had to protect Jesus and in like who could come and talk to you kind of a way. Not only because that wasn't a regular thing, but also because I think Jesus had really pivoted his purpose and his message to very much the people, his people. At least that's my first read on it. That's my first thinking of it. Just that would have been a big part of what he's up to, and why maybe there was this kind of like guarded element to what he was up to. So he starts talking about his death, and I think that's maybe the other part of why talking to people outside of the fold, so to speak, that the timing of that is so unique, is because if you imagine Jesus coming into Jerusalem, or about to come into Jerusalem, and Jesus sort of starting to put things in place for his kind of his triumphal entry, his claiming of the kingdom, I guess that would have been the anticipation, at least, that as they were moving towards Jerusalem, that Jesus would have been moving towards a place where everything was about to fall into place, right? Where He was going to be, kicking out the Romans. He was going to be setting things right. He was going to be putting into place his kingdom and his way. That's where you start to see the disciples trying to figure out who's going to be who in this new regime. And then he starts talking about his death. And I think every single time he talks about his death, it's like that. It's just that part that the people are trying to skip over. I think that's the fascinating part about it, is that no one stops or pauses and is like, wait a minute. What? Like, why do you keep saying this? We have to stop. Like, if this is what you're going to do, we all have to stop. And that's, and I feel like the more I read over and over and over again, as you do, the more I read scripture in this time of year and in this place, the more, I always think it's an odd thing to say, sympathize with Judas. But I think I at least start to picture and understand how it happened. Even if I'm like, obviously you did just the worst thing you could do in this situation. You chose the most wrong path you could choose. At least you can get your brain around how the choice was made, which doesn't justify it, which doesn't make it right, which doesn't make it okay, which doesn't make it something that we have to accept by any stretch of the imagination. But you can start to think through, well, how did you get there? What was the situation? What was happening around Judas that got him to a place where he's like, this is the only way out. I have to force him to do something else. And maybe it's because Judas was the only one paying attention. And I hate to say it like that, but, I think, was Judas the one who, of all the disciples, was actually hearing Jesus say, I'm going to die. This isn't going to go this way. And he was actually saying, oh, I think he means it, and he means it right now. And that's not going to fly with me. I didn't get this far. I didn't come to this place just for this guy to stop short of what we can accomplish together. This is not what I signed up for. And that's, of course, where everything goes off the rails. But you can see at least how this person got to that place. And the more you hear it in your head, the more you think about it from that perspective, you can start to kind of understand. And I think that might be a piece of it too. When you think about, like, so much of what Jesus does is about timing. He says, tell people this, or what do people say about me, or don't tell anybody, don't tell anybody. He does that kind of thing over and over again. And you start to think to yourself, well, why doesn't he want anyone to know? Or why does he keep, because I think it might be because he knows that there are people around him who will start to put things together. And that he's very careful with what information he gives and when. Kind of in a, I don't want to say in a political way, but like in a very strategic way. Jesus allows people to know who he is at very specific increments, because what he needs to ensure is that he gets to where he's going with enough people watching that he has the following and the movement that he's trying to create, but not so fast that he doesn't actually end up getting to where he needs to go. And that might be a little convoluted, but that's what I'm thinking about right now. Anyway. So Jesus then is talking to these people who want an audience with him. And he's talking about, seed and the fruit, and he's using a kind of a nature analogy, and basically saying that, like, if you don't go into the ground, if you don't die, if you're not in the ground, it's not gonna raise up. There's an obvious analogy with death and resurrection there. But I think I like the fact that he continues to try to use language that people can understand and can get their heads around. And that's always, I think, an interesting part of the way Jesus speaks. Because it almost, again, acts as this kind of delay tactic. Like, I'm telling you what you need to know, but I'm saying it cryptically enough that it'll take you some time to figure out and ponder and wonder. It's really interesting. And then the other part of this passage that's interesting, that will eventually kind of round out the theme I've been working on for this particular week, as it relates to this bigger theme that I've been looking at for Lent, is Jesus talking about the inevitability of his death. Well, of course, this hour is supposed to come. Could I deny my Father's plan for me? Of course not. And what's great about that is, of course, we know exactly the kind of tact or thought or how everything plays out, I guess you could say, that Jesus takes as he's in Gethsemane. He gets there, and the very human kind of, I don't want this to be what happens. Can we take this? If you can take this from me, Father, then take it. But your will be done. It's all very logical until he gets there. And then when he gets there, it's emotional. And there's something kind of amazing about that, being able to see all that at once, right? But Jesus, whenever he's able to, in this moment at least, think very clearly and very, I don't want to say logically, but like really understand how it all fits together. I think what's amazing about that is Jesus' recognition of what is supposed to be for him. I've walked up to this little circle chapel-y thing before. I thought I'd maybe sit for a second. So, you see in this moment, Jesus having a real sense of who he is. Maybe I won't sit. Maybe I'll just stand here against this thing. There you go. This real sense of who he's supposed to be, why he's here, a real sense of purpose. And he feels, I don't know, I get this kind of sense of contentment in that. The fact that it's not making him anxious, the fact that it's not making him feel like scared or defensive or any of those things. He's saying all these in a seemingly calm, compassionate way. That's why the sermon is called Fulfillment, and why I talk about it as the fifth gift that we receive in this season. This sense of purpose and fulfillment is really present in that. And I think what's interesting about that is that sense of purpose and fulfillment is one of those things that I think has always fascinated me. I've always been fascinated because I know people, and maybe fulfillment is different than knowing your path. I think they're connected, but I've known people in my life who have just always known what they were supposed to do, from the time they were young. I'm going to be a doctor, or I'm going to be a teacher, or I'm going to be a police officer or something. and they've always known it, and then they just went ahead and did it. They became what they always thought that they would become, and they're satisfied in it. And that's amazing. Now, some people, that's not their story, but they do find that path that really does that for them. I feel like that's always kind of eluded me a little bit. Now, again, and I think I've said this idea before, but I think the idea of becoming a pastor and doing that and that being who I am was certainly not the path that I thought that I would take. And it's one of those things that, even as satisfied as I am in it, and feel very blessed to be able to do it, yeah, and you deal with all the imposter syndrome and all the stuff that I talked about before, I think I still all the time work through, what am I supposed to be doing and who am I doing that for? And I think that sense of fulfillment and purpose is, you know, that you don't have to be a pastor for that to be true, most certainly. But I think that's one of the things that I find fascinating about the work that I do, is that, you know, I've had periods of my life in ministry where what really excited me, or what I thought I was uniquely gifted to do and accomplish, has pivoted. You know, I used to really think working with youth and college students, that was really the driving force of what made me want to do this. And it's still a wonderful part of what I do. And then at other times, thinking about the church as a kind of the tethering place for mission, outreach, you know, social justice, those types of things. That's been the thing that's really felt, pursuing that has been the fulfillment. And then I think recently, over the last few years, and maybe it's just because I've been able to be here at Northmont for a little while, is I find more and more how fulfilling it is to try to help enrich the lives of the people who are right in front of you. Meaning creating community and space for people to have that part of their lives be enriching and to feel really cared for. That's the part for me that, at least right now, is the part that I find wonderful and fascinating and interesting, and something that I hope that I can do well for at least as many people as I can. And maybe that's a part of it, that fulfillment isn't something that's a singular drive. Like it was for Jesus, that's what it was. It was, I was put here to do this, ultimately. And, you know, I know many of you, that you have a similar type of path. But then for others of you, that's not true at all. You know, you've had many either life paths or career paths, or you found passions after retirement, you know, things that, you know, you maybe didn't feel like you had time to do, or you know, the capacity for when you were working. And I've watched many of you take on art and photography or videos, or you know, finding joy in your families in a different way, or whatever it happens to be. I think all of us have that kind of drive to find that for ourselves, because ultimately what we want, or our sense of fulfillment, is impact and joy, or curiosity. And I think that's a pretty wonderful thing. And I think that the pursuit of that is one of the most beautiful and basic parts about what we get to do with the time that we have here. And so I think that for me to think about that in Lent is important, because we're supposed to be doing all this reflecting and you know, repenting and thinking about who we are and what our faith is and what it means. But there's a goal to that. There's an ultimate goal to all of that work and all of that discipleship and all of that, you know, is that we're supposed to come out on the other side of that with some sort of sense of purpose and belonging and way of making a new path in life that feels faithful. And that's why I feel like I really wanted to spend a little bit of time on this piece about gifts, what we receive in this season, because I think if we lose sight of that, then I think we lose sight of what makes this part of our journeys interesting. Because we're going to get to resurrection. You know, that's coming down the pike. But in the meantime, we have the journey, and it's a pretty wonderful one too. So we'll see. Anyway, I think that's what I have for this week. Thanks for taking a walk with me today, and thanks for being you. Just as a reminder, as we move forward in Lent and we get to Holy Week, we're going to be worshiping with our 319 friends the Holy Week. So there's an afternoon service at Highland on Palm Sunday. Wexford has the Maundy Thursday service in the evening, and then Northmont has the Good Friday service at noon on Friday, and then of course Easter. So just be paying attention to that and look for all the information about that. Anyway, thanks for joining on my walk. Thanks for doing this whole first look for me, with me, and I'll see you next time. Take care.